Good evening, everybody. Liz Statlander. Welcome to Liz Live Wednesday evening. Happy Wednesday night to all of you out there watching in South Florida, in Pittsburgh, PA, or wherever you may be. Welcome to Liz Live. We have a really cool show tonight. We're going to be talking about projection, and you may or may not know what projection is. We're going to talk about it. I'm in a rock and roll mood tonight as usual, and I have my Grateful Dead t-shirt on, and that's it. It's a beautiful day. And projection. What is projection? Well, this week, it's funny. I don't know if it's the spirit world, the angels, the forces at work that are with me, or whoever's with me that Lucky, no barking, that give me these ideas about what to talk about on my show so I can be helpful to other people. And projection has been coming up over and over and over again this week with a lot of my clients, and we all do it. We're all in a way victims of it, and we don't even know that we're projecting or that others are projecting on us a lot of the time. So projection is an old no barking, Lucky. The show's on, and you can't have his treat. Nope. So I try to give the dogs treats so they won't bark, but it's during the show, it's not working. So projection is actually a term that was made up by Sigmund Freud, who, many of us know that name as he's kind of like the godfather of psychology. And he believed that there were certain defense mechanisms that we all use in order to basically avoid feeling pain and avoid facing ourselves, because facing ourselves can be painful. So we choose not to. You love the Grateful Dead? That's awesome. So we try to do anything we can to avoid facing painful feelings, painful things. And so instead of absorbing things that we're really feeling and being honest about it, we project our reality onto the other people that we're in relationships with, or other people in general. So it sounds kind of confusing, but I'm going to make it really easy to understand by giving some examples, and I'm going to explain why projection is even important to talk about. So if you saw the ad or the preview that I put up, the post on Facebook and Instagram for tonight's show, talking about projection, I had a picture of a projector on the ad. And some of you may or may not remember, because you might be too young, what the old school projectors looked like. And the dogs are just not letting me do the show. You guys, stop it. They're all trying to get each other's treats. Okay, so old projectors would basically put lights on something that your teacher wanted to show on on a pull down screen in the old days. And so the light projects the object that he or she wanted you to learn up onto a screen so you can see it. So it's projecting an image onto something else. So the idea of projection in relationships and in psychology is when we actually project our own feelings and emotions onto somebody else like it's their truth. Or we take hurt and pain or things that we are feeling and we project it onto another person. And usually we do it to the people that, we're closest to, or we do it when we're in, very elevated emotional states. We also might think of projection, again, as if, again, depending on age dependent, I was born in the 70s, and we used to watch movies on a projector film, and there's two big tapes, and they would go around and around, and a light would project the images up onto a screen. So we are human meaning-making machines, and we are human projectors. And we are constantly projecting our reality out onto the world around us and out onto other people. And in some ways, this can be a beautiful phenomenon, and it, in other ways, can be a big problem. So let me start by giving you some examples of projection, and that might help you understand why we should be so aware of this, because our whole reality and the whole way that we see the world is a projection of us. So whatever we're thinking, feeling, whether it's real or not, we project onto the world around us and into our relationships. So we, in many ways, we construct our own reality, you know, and if you really want to get deep into it, I'm not sure there is a reality per se. I mean, of course, there's facts and figures, and there's different disciplines that we can come up with, you know, factual things, but largely we are walking human projectors, projecting what's on the inside of us to the outside of us. And good, bad, indifferent, that's just the way it is. And if we see it through the eyes of, you know, Sigmund Freud, then he saw it as a defense mechanism, again, for us human beings to avoid feeling our own pain. So I'm going to give you two interesting examples of projection that we've all experienced at one point or the other. And you might not have known it was projection, but once you understand it, it might not be so hurtful when it happens to you the next time, or it might not be so consuming. The emotions may not be so consuming to you. So first example that we've all experienced is basically when somebody is in, you know, a bad spot in their life. They're going through something very, very stressful, or they're going through some kind of pain, and they're not really, you know, able to get in touch with what it is they're feeling, or they don't know how to express what they're feeling, or how to get their needs met by using, you know, honest, kind words, because a lot of people have a hard time being vulnerable. So rather than, you know, saying, hey, you know, I'm having a really difficult time, or I'm really hurt, or I'm really sad, or I'm really angry, or I'm really whatever it is negative, the next person who may walk in our path or who may call us on the phone may get an earful when, you know, that feels very directed at you, that you really have nothing to do with, and that person is projecting their anger or projecting whatever unresolved issues they have, or whatever, you know, experience they're having in the moment, and they're making it your fault and they're putting it onto you. That is projection, right? So that person who, you know, called you on the phone, or who happened to call you in a bad moment, when you take things out on people, or someone's taking things out on you, they're actually projecting their, you know, their fears and their anger, or whatever that they're not dealing with, onto you. And it can be really hurtful, because if you don't know what's going on, or you don't understand, and you have nothing to do with whatever this person's talking about or being nasty to you about, it's very hurtful and confusing. And it's happened to all of us. We've done it to other people, right? We've all taken out our stuff on other people. We've all projected our own pain onto others. And we've all had other people project their pain onto us. And in the moment, it can be very daunting, and it can ruin your day, and it can really bring you down. But you have to remember that you're just projecting, or they're just projecting, a snapshot of a moment onto you in at that time. Something I noticed I did the other day, I was just like, I was in a hurry, and you know, my shoulder's been out of whack, and stop, no barking. No, Lucky, get down. And somebody was, you know, getting to me, like, you know, I was not in the best of moods, and this woman, like, I'm standing in line, and this woman just cuts the line, and I had been waiting for like 10 or 15 minutes. She cuts in front of me, and she goes right up to the register, and she sees me standing there. Normally, I would just let it go, but I was in a hurry. I was anxious. I had to get back to my office, and I was, you know, just in a hurry. And I actually said something to her, which is not really like me. And I just went up to her and I said, excuse me, ma'am, but we're waiting in line, and you just cut the whole line. I've been waiting. And she goes, oh, no, no, no. And I said, no, yes, there's a sign right there that says check out here, and you're standing all the way over there. That's not where the line is. And she starts arguing with me. So I said, you know what? I looked at her, I said, you know what? I don't have time to argue with people like you. I said, you know what? Go. And I couldn't believe I said that. But in that moment, I projected my own angst because I was in a hurry and I wanted to get where I had to go onto her, even though she was in the wrong. I mean, she was clearly in the wrong, but is it the biggest deal that somebody cuts you in line at CVS? Not really. It would have been an extra few minutes for me. But because of my own angst and my own things that I was going through in that moment, I projected that onto her. Like, another thing in this world that's going to, hold me up or bother me or, all of that. So that's another example of projection. And one of the most daunting experiences with projection would definitely be if you've ever been in a relationship with someone with a personality disorder. They will literally take everything that they do and everything that they are and tell you that you do all those things and that you are all those things. And it's quite fascinating in not really a positive way when you see it in action. But unfortunately, I've had it done to me, and it's just crazy. So imagine, if you're thinking about Freud and you're thinking about, defense mechanisms, and you're thinking about someone who really doesn't want to face themselves or who they are, they will literally tell you that you are all the awful things, or you do all the awful things that they do. And it can be very abusive in that way. Projection can be very abusive. And again, whether it's for better or for worse that we use projection as a defense mechanism, or we use projection in a way to create the reality that we want, it's constantly happening. And it's tricky because we don't even know that it's happening. We don't know sometimes that it's happening to us. We don't know that we're doing it because it's so natural that we are all so, kind of, I guess, self-absorbed in a way. And, we're created this way. And we tend to just assume that our views or our feelings are reality, when in fact they may not be. They might be your specific reality, but they might not be everybody's reality. So, and to understand how projection really works and why it's so important to be able to identify is because it's constantly happening. And again, it can be in a good way, it can be in a bad way. I had a client this week, a lovely, wonderful human being who, she's very sensitive to other people's pain. So she was telling me how, she was having a really hard time, kind of coping with somebody that she knows, tragedy that just happened. So it wasn't my client's tragedy, but it was a friend of hers tragedy. And we talked about it for a while, and it really, this other person's situation really got to her. So we talked about it and we discussed it, and I kept asking, well, what is this bringing up on you? What is this triggering you? And what we realized at the end of the session is that all of her own fears that she would experience in that person's shoes, she was projecting onto that person. And I said, well, those are your issues. Those are your fears. You don't know that that's your friend's fears. That's an assumption. You're projecting your own fears and your own stuff onto this person, and you're making yourself so upset and so sad about it. And it was like, what, wow, like what a, incredible phenomenon to, understand that it was such a weight lifted when we realized that even like when we're feeling like we're in crisis or we're feeling so horrible for other people, a lot of times we're feeling that way because we're taking the things that we would fear or things that we feel like we could never get through or we can never handle, and we're making the assumption by projecting those fears onto another that that's also their reality, when in fact that may not be the truth. And we get ourselves all worked up about things that might not even be happening for another person. So I know this is kind of complex, but again, I go back to, I think it's important to talk about because so many of us take on other people's shit, okay? And that shit that other people put on you is not about you. It's about their reality, their fears, their inner struggles. And one of the best quotes I actually ever heard was on Facebook. Somebody posted something a while back, and it said, basically, if there are people mistreating you, remember, it is not so much about you as it is about that person's inner struggle. So that rung so true to me, because if you stand back and you observe other people's behavior like you were watching a movie being projected onto a screen, you realize the truth in that if someone's mean to you or somebody mistreats you, that it's not at all about, it's not about you, it's about them. And then we take it on, and you know, it's ridiculous, right? And it's hurtful. So imagine that, right? So imagine the liberation that you feel when you come to that realization that, oh my goodness, this person just dumped all these things on me, or accused me of all these things, or made an assumption that, you know, these things are your fault or they're about you, when really they're all about the other person. You can't hear me now. That's strange. Did it come back? It should come back. Let me know on Instagram. Let me know if it's coming back. Your sound is off. I don't know how that's possible. Okay, it's definitely on Facebook. I don't know why that would happen. How about now on Instagram? Instagram, yes or no? It should be back on. Still can't hear. Okay, so sorry, I'm gonna just stop Instagram and just stay tuned. I'm just gonna I'm gonna redo the link. I don't know what happened, so just hang on Instagram. Good morning, Catherine. Let's see what's going on here. We got a little technical difficulty as usual, and let's just figure out what's going on here. So let's go like this, and like this, and okay. So anyway, getting back to projection. I don't know why. Okay, I'm freezing. Oh my gosh. Okay, hopefully you guys can hear me. I don't know what's up. Okay, so I'm really sorry about all those interruptions. So somebody was trying to call me, even though I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and I think that ruined the connection. So, can you guys hear me now on Instagram? Are we back on? Okay, all good, great. Okay, so, all right, so we're talking about projection. I'm sorry, this show is getting so distracted. We're talking about projection. We're talking about how other people project their crap, their negativity, their, their problems, their issues onto us, and then we take it on as though it's us, when really it's about their inner struggle. So even if we take the example I gave you, where I was in CVS the other night and I was like full of angst, and I had my own stuff going on, and I went in there and I basically just, you know, kind of like not yelled at, but like really confronted this woman because she cut me in line. That's not something that I would normally do, but I was projecting my own angst onto her. Now, again, in that situation, she did cut the line, and we had all been waiting for a really long time, and it wasn't very nice, and she did argue with me. And when I tried to politely tell her, ma'am, the line is over there, we've all been waiting for 15 minutes, and, you know, but that's not really something that I would have normally done. I would have just said, okay, it's one more person, you know, I can live with it. So I think it's important that we understand this concept, because we're all just really projecting our own view, our own lens onto the world, onto our relationships, onto others, that is our truth, perhaps. Perhaps it's our truth in a moment, or it's our inability to face our own pains or our own struggles, but it's not necessarily reality. And when other people do it to you, it's very hurtful. And again, when I was talking about when people do it to you, when people are, you know, taking things out, you know, we use the term in pop culture, oh, you know, she really took her bad mood out on me, or she really, you know, or he really, you know, took out his bad day on me. I mean, you know, yeah, that's a way of saying it, but they're projecting their own reality. And once you create a reality and you believe it, or you believe it in a moment, then it becomes your truth, even if it isn't, right? And we can even look at this in terms of politics. We can look at this in terms of, let's take politics for an example. I have learned, especially from being a therapist, that most people's political views come from their own experiences. They don't necessarily come from reality or truth or looking at facts or looking at figures, but they come from an emotional place where they have experienced, perhaps they had a negative experience with, you know, a police officer, or they, you know, got screwed by the government in some way, or, you know, they were working really hard and seeing other people get things easily, or vice versa, or, you know, I want to take care of everybody, so I believe in this. And it's all about, again, your worldview that you are then projecting onto the world and the people around you. And really, who's to say what's really true or what's not? How do you even get to the truth? I mean, it's very difficult, because we are just human projectors, and we're human meaning-making machines that are constantly in operation. And I think that when it becomes an issue is when you have people really lashing out at you or accusing you of things that you didn't do. You know you didn't do it. You know you didn't say these things, but you're being told that you do and you are all those things, when really it's them. You know, that's really the term in which Freud was talking about it. When people are going through so much pain, so much of their own pain, or facing so much of their own pain, that rather than dealing with it, they project it onto the people that they're closest to, and you become a little bit of a punching bag. So it's critical to understand this in order to protect yourself and protect your own feelings, and to understand that when people are coming at you in a rough way, or a harsh way, or a mean way, that's based on their experiences, not yours, and their inner struggles, right? So another you know, issue that comes up a lot with my clients is, let's say, you know, a parent is very hard on a daughter because of her weight. And unfortunately, I get this quite a bit. Well, it's not really the daughter's issue, because whether the daughter's thin or overweight or whatever, it's her own decision as to what weight she wants to be or how she wants to look. That's her personal choice. And if the mother is coming at her, pushing her, go on a diet, go to the gym, you're heavy, you're this, that's not about the child. That's about the mother's own insecurities, about her own body issues, or how she's concerned that others may perceive her daughter as a reflection of her if she's not perfect or fitting into that image. So parents often project their own issues and their own fears and splatter them all over their children, and then the children absorb that as meaning I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, I'll never be enough, I'll never be good enough for my mom and dad, which will carry out into their relationships, all from the projector that is coming from the mother, okay? And we can look at that with fathers, we can look at that with loving relationships. Another client of mine, she had a husband who was mentally ill, and he was very hard on her, and she didn't understand really that his mental illness was as serious as it was, and he was constantly hard on her, making accusations that perhaps she was being unfaithful, which was the furthest thing from the truth. And she's having a really hard time accepting that. But that wasn't about her, anything she was doing. It was about the husband and his own problems and his own fears and his own insecurities that, just like a projector machine, projected those issues right out onto his wife. And let me tell you, this happens all the time. So the bottom line message here is that whatever other people say to you or attack you with or accuse you of, that is not about you, it's about them. Unless, of course, in the situation of infidelity or something, you are doing it and they're sensing it, that's a different thing. But when people are just coming out of left field, calling you names, saying things, making you feel bad about yourself, and we then take it on as a truth that, oh my gosh, this person thinks I'm unattractive, or they don't like me, or I'm this or I'm that. If somebody's that rude and that inconsiderate of your feelings, that they're just going to come out and say mean things to you that they know would be hurtful, that's about their inner struggle. That's about their issues and whatever insecurities they have. Because a person who feels good about themselves, a person who is in touch with their own emotions and their own feelings, doesn't feel a necessity to make other people feel awful, period. And they would contain those emotions and manage those emotions in a way that doesn't impact or hurt the other people around them. Now, that's not to say that we don't all have a bad day or a bad moment where we may lash out. I mean, that's part of life. I'm not talking, even in those situations, it's the same thing. But where it really becomes a problem is when we get into these relationship struggles and these power struggles, and we get, sort of mistreated or even abused because the person that we're with feels so horrible about themselves that they have to project that horribleness onto everybody around them. And we all know people like that. And I think it's really important that we understand that it's not about us. Other people's behavior is not about us. It's about them and their shit and their own views and their own, reality in that moment that's coming out. And they might have very good reason, maybe they're going through something really awful and they feel terrible, but that is not at all the issue. The issue is them, not you. And just because you're going through something horrible and bad in life doesn't give you a license to treat other people poorly. It can excuse certain things. Again, we all have our bad moments. We've all been guilty of projecting our shit onto other people. But when it becomes, again, a consistent, continuous, hurtful pattern, that's when we have to, kind of, cut it off. And where I really see this as sad is with children, because I have, maybe if I hold them, this is Lucky Stein. And say hi, Lucky. If we think about it, our children often get the worst end of the parents' projection, right? Because parents are constantly projecting themselves onto their children, and they make an assumption or belief that their children should do exactly what they want them to do, and they're not really thinking about what the child wants. Or the parent has these beliefs about their own insecurities that they're not in touch with, and they put that on their children. I have parents that won't accept that their children are gay. Is that because the child is gay? No. That's because the parent is concerned about how the parents themselves will be perceived because they have a gay child. I see this all the time. So in these sort of critical and controversial relationships that happen in families and romantic relationships, it's really important to be aware of these things, because if we absorb all of the negative messages, or all of the our parents or our partners or our friends, or even society's I guess malignant projection, then we often will take it on as being true, and we feel really bad about ourselves, and we start actually becoming like a punching bag, or like a victim in a way. I hate the word victim, but we become the punching bag of other people, and we become sort of an object that someone else is trying to mold or control, that isn't necessarily who we are, what we want to be. And I see that all the time in parent-child relationships, right? I mean, parents are walking projectors, just like all of us, but it gets really intense when it comes to children. And so you can think, even in the moment, maybe for yourself, about, wow, what was it like when I was growing up, and what things did my parents struggle with within themselves that they projected onto me. And I know it's issues of weight, issues of success, issues of beauty, issues of fitting in to a certain, group of people, or, having certain titles, and pushing all of that we need to feel secure about ourselves. We put that right onto our kids, right? So if my child is not successful according to my standards, I may berate her, but it's not about her. It's about what I need to feel, or what a parent needs to feel, in order to be acceptable to their own circle of people, families, community, society, etc. So once you really understand that, and you really absorb what I'm saying, and you really get the picture of how we are walking meaning-making machines, and we are walking projectors of all of our own stuff, it's just liberating, because you start to disconnect from the pain or the abuse or the control or whatever that was put upon us by partners and siblings and family and friends. And we can say, wow, that's actually their stuff. That's actually their issue. That's not actually me. They're not really behaving that way because I am so awful, or I am so unacceptable, or I am such a disappointment. They're behaving that way because that's how they actually feel about themselves. And once you can get a hold of that, life can really change, because you start seeing the world from a different perspective, and in a way that's much more healthy, that keeps you from absorbing others' bad stuff, right? And people love to put their bad stuff out on other people. And we need to do a better job about understanding how to draw the line between what is our crap that we're putting on somebody else and what is their crap and where the line is. Okay? So once you understand this projectory idea and this idea of projection as being a defense mechanism, we can start to really understand human behavior in a different way, and we can stop taking it in and believing all the negativity that oftentimes people will put upon us. And that's why I think it's so critical, because I see it happening in so many of the families that I treat. Oh my gosh, April, how are you? I hope you guys are getting better audio. I don't know what's going on here. But so nice to see you. A blast from my past. My goodness. Catherine Marie. Yep, it's them. They like to pull you into their miserable world. Yes, they do, or try to. Hopefully it stops. Your Instagram was fun. I checked it out. Thanks, Chad. I appreciate that. I've posted that quote many times. I might have seen it on your page, actually. Okay. Anyone have any questions, comments? I hope you can hear me. I love hearing you. Oh, I miss you too. Oh my goodness. What a pleasure to see you. And hi to everybody over here on Instagram. Feel free to, chit chat about this. I know it seems kind of like a little bit of a elusive, issue to talk about. We're talking about projection, which I think we all, we hear about projection in like the old school psychology, like projection as a defense mechanism, right? We have, Freud had like denial and projection and resistance and, all these different things that he believed we did to keep us safe and to not have to actually, face ourselves. So it's much easier to put it upon somebody else. And it can happen in a positive way too. We may be so over worried and so concerned and about a certain situation or person, but it's really our own stuff. Like, so let me give an example. As a therapist, it's very tricky to do therapy with people who may trigger my own stuff. And we do go through a lot of training for this, but it's very difficult when we might be sitting with somebody who, is going through something that we have been through, or they may come to us with a problem and a perspective that, I don't, agree with, or it's not in my, my lens, my worldview as being, a good decision. So it's constantly work for us therapists, if we're being responsible, to check in with our own stuff to make sure we're not projecting our own stuff and our own views on, on our clients. Or it might not even be that we're putting our negative views onto our clients, but we might be like, oh, well, I went through this and, this is how I handled it and this is what I figured out. So I'm going to advise my client to do this thing or act in this way that maybe isn't in their truth. And we're in a position as a therapist, in some ways, I don't want to say authority, but we have people coming to us for expertise, and they're putting our trust in us to have, healthy growth and healthy challenges. And so as therapists, we have to be like in very good shape mentally in order to not let that happen. And so what I do a lot of times is I like to put it out there. Like if someone's telling me something that like, oh my God, I went through this, or yeah, I had to deal with the same thing in my life, and I have some kind of advice from my own experiences, what I'll do is I'll preface it by saying, listen, I don't know if this is right for you, but when I went through this situation, here's how I handled it. Now, that was one of many options of how this situation can be held. This is what I did, and this was really worked for me. Do you think that that's something that might work for you? And that way, the therapist can be honest with the client about, hey, this is my worldview. It might not be yours. And I want you to know that it might not be yours. And I don't want to push my worldview on you. So I'm going to let you know that I tell people, I have a little bias in this situation, but I can still see it objectively. And, here's why and here's what happened. And sometimes clients will say, oh my God, that's so helpful. It's so good to know that, someone else understands. And then some people may say like, that's great that you could do that, Liz, but, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. But at least let's start to be honest about things, and let's face ourselves a little bit, and let's face our own fears and our own worries and our own concerns, and let's keep that to ourselves and separate it from putting that or assuming that other people going through something are feeling the exact same way. And let us also learn to be careful that other people don't put their stuff onto us and then we accept it as true. And that is one of the saddest things that I see between parents and children. And it's heartbreaking because, I have another client I'm working with who, she just has a shit dad. And he, she's a little girl, and sometimes he's in her life, sometimes he's not. He doesn't always say very nice things to her. And, she takes it on as the truth because she's a young girl and she doesn't have the skills or the developed, the ability of developed critical thinking to be like, oh, that's my dad's issue. That's not my issue. No, when your father is unkind to you or tells you bad things about yourself or doesn't show up in your life, that's really hurtful. That feels like rejection, and it feels like you're never going to be good enough or that you're unloved, especially for a little girl. And so I'm having to explain to these young girls, like early teens, projection, and that, hey, listen, this isn't you, my dear child. This is your father. Like, he's got issues, really bad issues, that he is unable to care for you and show up for you as a parent. It's not a reflection of you being unlovable or you being unworthy or you being, valueless or unimportant. That's how you're taking it, but that's dad projecting his own whatever, and who cares, that's his problem, his issues of maybe, not thinking he's good enough to be a dad, or maybe, he's just a selfish jerk, or maybe he's whatever. But that's all going on in his worldview and his lens, and it actually has nothing to do with you. And when you start to get what I'm saying and understand this sort of theoretical idea of projection, it just feels so good because you go, oh my God, it's not me. All these years I was carrying around all this rejection and this pain and this hurt from my father, from my mother who did these things to me, but oh my God, it wasn't about me. And most of the time, it's not about us. It's about the other person's inner struggle, and they are putting it on us. So I think that where Freud says it's a defense mechanism for the person in turmoil, which I would agree with, I think it's also a tool for us non-projectors in the negative way, to understand that it's not us who's creating the mean behavior or the hurtful behavior or the lack of love when we're out there trying to give it. It's not about us. It's about the other person's problems. And once we can explain that to young girls and young women growing up in the world, they start to gain some confidence and they start to understand whose crap belongs to who. And it's a really wonderful experience to be able to explain that to young children and have them understand it, which sometimes takes a couple sessions or so. And then they start to go, oh, wow, that's right. Oh my gosh, I was believing and taking all of that behavior that was so hurtful as that there was something wrong with me, when in fact it's the other way around. And it's the other way around, especially with young children, because they're somewhat innocent. Not to say that, young teenage girls and boys don't project all their crap all over their parents, because of course they do that too. But again, it's being aware of it, it's recognizing it, and it's also being able to delineate where one person's life begins and another ends, and how, people are flawed. And maybe I'm being too kind in this next statement, but I think people, most of the time, with the exception of like just some really bad seeds and some really evil people, most of the time it's just about them and their their crap that they've never dealt with, that they're spewing out. And I also always tell my clients that you can only get out of something what's in there. And I always give the analogy of, if you take an orange and you squeeze it, what are you going to get? You're going to get orange juice. You're not going to get wine. You're not going to get milk. You're not going to get hot chocolate. If you squeeze an orange, you get orange juice, because the only thing that orange has to give you is orange juice, is what is inside of it, and some seeds and some pulp. That's it. And people are no different. You're only going to get out of people what they actually have to give. And a lot of people don't have a lot to give. A lot of people don't have self-awareness and self-actualization and thoughtfulness for other people's feelings. Or sometimes people go through really hard times where they're unable to cope or manage their own emotions, and they, throw it out onto everybody else around them. And sometimes, in certain circumstances, you give people a pass card, but in more circumstances than not, it's a hard stop for us in that relationship, to really stop and reevaluate